Today, I have a very special treat for you because here on Beyond the Trailer, we're going to go even more beyond the trailer than usual. And we're going to talk to someone who actually makes those trailers and oversees the process. Hello, Alex Sadof.
Hello, Grace.
Thank you for coming on.
You are very welcome. Thanks for having me. Love your channel.
Thank you so much. Yes, you reached out to me. I got an email from you because you cut the trailer for the one and only Ivan.
I did.
And you saw my reaction. What's it like seeing a reaction to your work?
Well, I think, when you're doing anything artistic, which I believe that what we do is a very kind of artistic career, I think deep down inside of all of us, we're looking for approval. We're looking for, people to say, yeah, I agree with that. Or if they don't agree with it, if they don't like it or something like that, you want to find out why. So I think that it's really interesting for us in this new kind of thing that's happening with reaction channels and people reacting to shows and trailers and things like that. It really gives you an immediate kind of thing to go off of. So watching reactions for us is really, it's fun because we get to see people see if they recognize certain things or pick out certain things that we did or why, or sometimes if they're wrong about something, we're like, well, wait till they see the movie. Or
that's great.
So it is a lot of fun, but really it is a lot of fun to see people react and get that immediate.
That's because the trailer is more important than ever before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Before it was a casual advertisement that played in front of the movie, but now it's a huge marketing tool, and people like me go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
I know. Back in the day, before people were going frame by frame and looking at the trailers like that, it was just, you would see it in the theater and then that was it. You'd have to, if you wanted to see it again, you'd have to go to the theater again.
Yeah.
And see it. I mean, there would be TV spots and things like that, but to see the trailer, you'd have to go to the theater. So now it's a whole different ballgame.
Do you have to be very mindful of that when you make the trailer? Do you, because we're going to find the clues if you're not careful.
You absolutely do. And I would say it was a good, at least 10 years ago, where the clients in the studios, I mean, they would be mindful of that, where it's like, well, they're going to pause on this. So we have to go through frame by frame and make sure that everything is kosher, everything is good, and nothing gets away from us.
That's awesome. And so in addition to cutting trailers yourself, you're also the creative director at Propeller.
Yes.
And that's a company that, what does Propeller do?
Yeah, well,
just trailers?
We're an advertising company that specializes in movie trailers.
And so you were part of the group that did the Mulan teaser that made everybody cry. So how many people does it take to make a teaser like that?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, we have a fantastic group. The very talented Maureen Abernathy, she's the one that edited the Mulan teaser. And my friend Linda Bobel, who is the senior creative director at Propeller, she worked on it with her assistant Fritz and us to make it come to life. But it's an interesting process. It can be a very long process. It depends on where in the campaign you are.
That was the first one. That was the opening salvo.
So, I mean, if you're coming into a campaign and, you're cutting TV spots, something where the film is kind of already established, where they already have a couple of versions of the feature edited together and things like that. When you come on, it's a little easier because you kind of have a sense of what the film is already. When you're starting at the very beginning, like when we did with Mulan, you're working from dailies that are just littered with time code and security.
Oh, wow, so you're cutting from the dailies?
And all this stuff. So as they're shooting the film, every day we're getting new batches of dailies in. So we're taking a look at those and, we're kind of piecing them together. We'll have our assistants do a rough cut of the film in scenes. So it's like, okay, we got scenes, 172 to 175.
That's amazing.
Okay, you do a rough cut and cut these together. So we'll start putting it together. But the interesting thing is that you don't really have a sense of what the tone of the film is.
That's
You know,
right.
we're just getting dailies. Take one, take two, take three. So sometimes we'll put it, you know, as we're cutting the rough cut of the feature together, we'll be using takes that the director won't use, and it's a totally different
So
take.
is that why people have these conspiracy theories these days about like, where's that movie and why didn't this get into the final cut? Because you're getting a trailer from the dailies.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, especially, you know, when we do a rough cut, when we finally get all of the dailies in, and we get a rough cut of a feature, it'll be like 4 hours long. You know, it'll be really, really long. So, I mean, but that's just us, you know, kind of piecing together the scene. Obviously, when they do a version one of, you know, of a cut of a movie, it's much shorter, but they're still close to 3 hours long. So they're either taking scenes out or moving things around, or just the pacing of the editing becomes faster.
So that's why these days, the first couple of trailers, I mean, we've had famous instances of that, sometimes can be very different, especially as films get more massaged. Relying on
like I said, it could be a different take, or it could be they could have shot it a different way, or the scene could have been taken out completely.
Yeah.
And you're just like, where's that cool dialogue line or that cool shot that I remember from the trailer? It's gone.
Yeah.
So that happens all the time.
That's fascinating to see that evolution, because I think they do, you know, particularly, you know, you work primarily with Disney, but other studios futz with their films a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So how many people would you say work on a trailer?
Well, it depends, because when you're cutting a trailer, it's not just you know, the editor and a producer or a creative director or something like that. Generally, and especially for a movie like Mulan, there might be multiple editors in my company, each editing a trailer. And then there may be multiple companies that also have multiple editors working on a trailer. So it's like Maureen will cut one, somebody else will cut one, and then at another company, they'll have 2 or 3 people.
So the studio will hire multiple companies to cut a trailer and then decide which one they like the best?
Well, yeah, basically. So what happens is there could be, it is intense. It's fierce competition. So, you know, there could be 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, depending on the size and the budget of the movie and the marketing budget that they have. They'll have many different vendors cutting many different trailers, and at that point, it's really it's the individual editor that comes up with how it is that, you know, they'll watch the movie, they'll have some type of an emotional response to the footage and how they want to portray this. And you know, they'll pick the music, they'll pick.
Do they go with their gut, or do you guys sit down and talk about it and be like?
Well, you sit down and talk about it at the beginning. You know, if there's a script, sometimes we'll follow a script. Like we'll have packets of scripts where we'll have a copywriter, you know, may write 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, 15, 20 sometimes scripts, and we'll go through them, and we'll say, okay, well, this script says this, you know. Usually for a teaser or something like that, it's pretty much, you know, next summer from the studio that brought you blah, blah, blah.
So you guys are writing those lines, those trailer lines, like in a world.
But yeah, so we, you know, our copywriters, you know, will write those. But generally in a teaser, it's pretty simple. The trailers will have a little bit more information in the copy. But once you get that down, the editor will look at the copy and then kind of say, all right, well, where's the story arc here? What do I want to do? And then they'll pick the music, they'll pick the sound effects, they'll pick the shots.
That's awesome.
Dialogue bites, and they'll edit it all together.
Well, also, you know, we've talked, you know, there's been instances in the past, and I've talked about it on my show, where a film doesn't have the money shot. You know, like the famous example is Independence Day, had that shot of the White House being blown up for the trailer.
Right.
It was ready. Have you ever had to go to a studio and say,
Yep.
I need more?
Yep. Well, it's not a question of I need more, but depending on where the trailer is in the process. So let's say, like I said, there's competition all over the place. So, you know, we'll have a couple of people, another company will have a couple of people. And once you submit your version 1, so version 1 belongs to the editor. That's their baby. That is this is my thing. Once that goes out and it goes to the studio, then, you know, the clients take a look at it. They'll have meetings about it. Then they'll go to their bosses and they'll have meetings about it. And there could be 5 or 6 different trailers that they're all looking at. And during the and then they'll give us notes, you know, then we don't like this line, or this line is good, or, you know, whatever, change this, we don't like the music or whatever. So then they come back to you, and you know, that's when the editor's like, oh, I can't believe they don't like this. It was perfect the way I had it. I can't believe they don't like that. But the funny thing is, because you're very, you know, as an editor, you're very, very, very attached to your version.
Yeah.
But you understand the process, and as it goes along, just like cutting the feature of a film, it gets tighter, it gets better, and it really does progress along the way. So to answer your question, as far as the money shots, you know, as you start going through these versions, and, you know, trailers can get to 20, 30, 40 versions sometimes. Sometimes
Wow.
they'll only go to version 9 because they love it and it just works out that way. But as they start whittling down to, okay, we started out with 6 trailers, we're going to kill this one, we're going to kill that one, now we've got 4. And as it starts going, the studio will take a look at the shots that are tracking well, or whatever. And they will have the visual effects department start working on those shots first. So they can have those shots ready, or at least close to ready, for the trailer. And then sometimes, you know, for a teaser, or especially for a film that has a lot of visual effects, they may just do the visual effects of the shots that are in the teaser, and then just start with that, and then continue on and you know, work on the other things, you know, which is very interesting because, like, you know, going back to cutting from dailies and things like that, I mean, both Mulan and Ivan, you know, from the very beginning, when you're watching these films in their infancy, you know, it's
just Bryan Cranston.
They're on wires, you know, Brian, you know, but the thing is that, you know, Ivan was kind of like a hybrid shoot, you know. So the way that they did it is they had scenes where it was, you know, humans and humans, which is just a regular shoot. Then they have, you know, humans and animals, and then animals and animals.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ivan is, you know, when they're shooting it, it's actually an actor that's playing Ivan, and you know, Stella the elephant, it's 2 guys in green unitards, and one person is the head and the other person is the tail, and they're just kind of walking around. And then they start adding the visual effects, and those are just visual cues for the actors.
So when you're looking at the dailies, do you hear like, for instance, do you hear like Sam Rockwell and Danny DeVito's performance, or you have to like kind of figure out what? That must be so complicated working on a film like that.
Yeah, for the dailies, for that, we actually, for Ivan, when we started working on it, we actually had a rough assembly of the feature. So I don't think anybody was working from dailies on that. We had a rough assembly of that. You know, still old shots where, you know, you could see them working the puppets or whatever, those types of things. So all of their performances were already recorded, so that made it a lot easier.
That's good. So you know the good line reading. You're like, that's good.
Yeah, for sure.
So also another controversy with trailers, okay, is maybe sometimes they show too much. Mm-hmm. So how do you strike the right balance of selling the movie? Like, if you don't show something cool, people aren't going to go. Yeah. But without giving away too much.
Well, that's a fine line. You know, it is a very fine line, because it depends on where the campaign is. You know, obviously for a teaser, you're not going to show much. It could be because they don't have that much footage, first of all, but it also is because it's a tease. It's a teaser. Yeah. You know, I remember I think the first teaser that I saw that really stuck in my head was the teaser for Terminator 2. Way back in the early 90s, right? And it was just that dun 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 dun, and then all of a sudden you just saw the red eye. You know, I think that was it. And I was like, man, that's so cool. You know, I thought that it was the coolest thing ever. So I do love teasers. But as far as showing too much, you know, I think that, you know, sometimes if it's not a story that people know, if it's something new, like Mulan, people know the story. Ivan, there was a book, so people generally know the story. Of course, a lot of people, if you grew up and you were too old by the time the book came out, maybe you don't, so that would probably have to have a little bit more story. You know, you do have to be able to tell a story so that the audience understands what's happening. And when you're telling a story in 2.5 minutes, you're taking a 2-hour movie and you're basically summing it down to 2.5 minutes. And when you start, you know, the process that we do sometimes is, well, not sometimes, all the time, is when you get a film and you get dailies, you do a breakdown. Okay, so you're watching the film, and then you're putting markers, and you're like, okay, Bryan Cranston says, "Hey, Ivan," blah blah blah, and then next line, okay, Julia says that. So you're breaking it down line by line.
Oh, you are to that.
Yeah,
to
that's
level.
part of the breakdown process.
Wow.
Yeah, and then what you're doing is you're marking your shots. So you've got this shot. These, you know, here are our master shots. Here are, you know, these shots. Here are the shots of Stella. Here are the shots of Ivan. Here are the shots of Bob.
Just as if you were editing the actual film.
Well, not really editing it, but taking all the visuals and putting markers in bins.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can say, yeah, here are all the Bob lines. Here are all the Ivan lines.
Do you have like a money shot bin?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
You know,
awesome. You're like, this is the magic sauce. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're breaking it down, the reason why you're doing that is because you're trying to find the way to make this story arc 2.5 minutes long. Okay. So when you're trying to get from point A to point B to point C and tell this story, you know, you have got this line propels us to this point, that propels us to this point, but there are a lot of hammocks and a lot of, you know, storylines that have to get filled in, and you say to yourself, all right, well, if these are the only lines that I have in there, it's not going to make sense. So how do I get the viewer from this part of the story?
That's fascinating.
So sometimes you're kind of forced to tell a lot of story just to get from, you know, from one point to another. That could be one reason why people say, well, there's too much story in it. Another reason is, you know, we also do testing. And with testing a trailer is an important part of the process. You know, they'll take the 4 top trailers that all of the vendors did.
All right, so they whittled it down to 4, and then they actually show it to people?
And they will show it to people, and they'll get focus groups and testing audiences, and they'll show them the trailer, and they really, you know, fine-tooth comb it, where, you know, they say, okay, well, you know, is it like those things that we see in the movies where you're on the other side of a one-way mirror? I've never done one personally, so I don't know what the actual setup is. Probably not, but basically what they do is they invite people to come and watch these trailers, and then the audiences will compare the trailers. Well, what did you think about you know, this part of this trailer? What were your overall impressions? Did you like it? Would you go see this movie? How important is it that Bryan Cranston is the lead actor?
That's incredible.
Danny DeVito is a thing, you know, and it says, okay, these demographics of, you know, female audiences 18 to whatever have a 67% approval rating of this part of the thing, and male audiences.
Wow.
So with Ivan, it was, you know, the breakdown was, you know, female audiences, male audiences, children, moms with kids, and it broke it down into each of these demographics. And then you would get the results back, and it would say, well, they liked this part of the trailer, but this part they didn't like. They liked this part of the trailer, this part they didn't like. And we'll take that information and we will improve upon, you know, what we edited.
How long would you say it takes from like you get the call from the studio and they'll be like, cut a trailer for Mulan or Ivan, and how long till we the public see that trailer?
A long time, usually. It's usually a long time. I mean, I'll tell you, I think we got the initial footage for Mulan, we got in about 2 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, so
that trailer came out about 8 months ago, right?
No, it came out a year and a half. It came out at the Women's FIFA World Cup in April of 2019 is when our teaser came out.
That's incredible. So you had a year to make that teaser.
About 6 months, I would say.
6
So
months.
yeah, so I think it came out about almost a year and a half ago. I think was the 2019.
Isn't that incredible?
I know.
Well, that's because we have the pandemic, unfortunately, which delayed the film.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
how did they keep it a secret with everybody seeing it?
With how do you
A
mean?
teaser, like they've shown it to all these focus groups and all these studio executives, and they managed to like really, like, we're all like,
Well, with the
oh
focus
my God.
groups, I'm not sure about that. But as far as the trailer companies, I mean, you have to run a very, very, very tight ship. And with Disney having Star Wars and Marvel, I mean, the security that we have to have at our company is pretty crazy. I mean, we have cameras and biometric locks, and you're bound, to this.
No, I know another person who works in advertising, and they said to even bid for the work, you have to have all that security in place to qualify for Disney, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you work in a very secure environment, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, what's interesting now though is, working from home. I mean, we're mostly working from home now. So we've had to modify the security that we have in order to work on these types of things and implement those security protocols at home. So I had to have, the tech people come out and install firewalls and cameras and, all of that stuff.
You put actual cameras in your home?
In my edit bay at home, and it's not just, it's the level of security is pretty interesting, because it's not only do you have to have the cameras, but you have to have a digital backup that goes back a certain amount of time. Like,
oh yeah.
Yes, I think it's 90 days or something like that. So if you have a digital backup of only 30 days, that doesn't qualify. It has to go back a certain amount.
90 days. Wow.
Yeah, it's something like that.
That's incredible.
But there's a lot of security. But not only that, I think that if you work in the trailer business, there's it's a community. It really is a community.
Even though it's so competitive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is very, very competitive, but it is we all know each other for the most part. I mean, back when I first started, it was much smaller, so you really pretty much knew most of the people.
You've been doing this since about 2000, you said, right?
Yeah. So
how many trailer houses are there today?
I couldn't even begin to tell you. I really don't know. I mean, there's a couple of really big ones, and then there's a lot of smaller ones. But it's a lot more than it was in 2000. I mean, it's the whole industry kind of changed right as I was starting, because when I started in 2000, I went to Emerson College in Boston, and then when I moved out here, I went to UCLA and studied film when I was getting certified in Avid. So back in the day, to be an editor, you had to know Avid, and Avids were, $150,000 machines and programs.
And for people who don't know, it's a computer made specifically for editing.
It's a computer made specifically for editing, right? So basically what it was is it had a proprietary hard drive. It had these things called RMAGs, which you would pop them in and pop them out. They're about, this big with a handle, really, really heavy. Each one was 9 gigabytes. And let me tell you, back in 2000, 9 gigabytes was a lot of storage space.
That's hilarious.
But anyway, so you put them in, and so it was an actual, what Avid did is they would take Apple computers and they would turn them into these Avid machines. So basically an Avid machine was an Apple computer that had been changed into this piece of hardware. And they were very, very, very expensive. They were, I think, about $150,000, something like that. So it's not like any Joe Schmo knew how to do film editing. You had to go to school to learn how to do it. So it was different back then, because you didn't have the opportunity to just practice editing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So when I started at the first company that I worked at, Trailer Park, in 2000, we were working on that, and that was the same year that the very first version of Final Cut Pro came out. And I think our company was one of the first, if not the first, advertising agency to actually use Final Cut Pro. And we installed it on one of our systems. Now you're talking about, at the time, it was $1,000 program in 2000. So $1,000 program versus, $150,000 edit bay for an Avid. As soon as Final Cut Pro came out, and it proved to be a successful platform and an successful application and to do film editing, it became a lot easier for trailer companies and advertising companies to all of a sudden start popping up, because you didn't have to have an initial investment of $2 million.
That's incredible.
And this and that. It's like, these kind of inexpensive programs to start.
What do you use now?
There are a lot more. So right now I use Adobe Premiere Pro.
Oh, that's what I use. Yeah. And I'm making YouTube videos. So
so
everybody's working at these different levels.
Yeah, I think it was the natural progression, because when you went from Final Cut Pro, I think Final Cut Pro 7 was the last version before they went to their Final Cut Pro 10, and everything kind of changed. And as far as the timeline setup and things like that, it was once they stopped support for Final Cut 7 and you were forced to go to Final Cut 10, I think it was a much easier transition for people to move over to Premiere, because it just felt more natural. It felt like what you had already known.
Yes. So if somebody else today is interested in being working in trailers, I know that you said it's easier to do an editing system, but you still have to have training.
Well, yeah, you do. I mean, the interesting thing about it too is that certainly now versus, again, when I first started, people have YouTube channels. People are editing on their phones. They're editing their TikToks. They're editing their stories, or whatever. So film editing has almost become kind of a natural part of a person's life if they're into digital or social media at all. So I think that most younger people already have the foundation to become a film editor, or to become a trailer editor, really, if that's what they want to do. But it's a very different kind of editing, because you have, like I said, you have to tell a certain story. There are certain story arcs that you have to have. There are limitations that you have. You've got, for media buys, you've got 15-second spots, 30-second spots. You need to tell that story exactly in those 30
you can't
seconds.
get an extra second.
No, you can't, and when it's really funny, because you'll have a TV spot that you're editing, and it's like your final piece of dialogue, your narration, so-and-so's this movie rated PG. Okay. Oh, that last line is out at 29.5 seconds. Perfect. And then the studio will come to you. Well, we need to add these tags, soundtrack available on blah, 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 only available here, and limited editions apply. And then all of a sudden you've got these tags. You're like, how am I going to fit all this into this?
That's so funny.
So now you've got to find 3 or 4 seconds or whatever. But it's a different style of editing, because it really is short form storytelling.
Does someone need to be an editor to come work in trailers, or should they have an advertising background at all? I mean, what would you be looking for in an applicant? Because I'm sure that you get a lot of applicants.
You do. I think what is most important, because it is a creative field, if you're looking to be a creative film editor and edit trailers, I think the most important thing that you need to have is you need to have passion, and you need to have talent. Those are the two things, and we've been doing this for so long that I think that we can recognize talent, or a person that has a good eye for something, but storytelling abilities is certainly very, very important. And you have to have a passion for movies. You need to look.
Right. How is it seeing these movies over the process? I mean, is it weird to deconstruct them that way? You saw Mulan this morning.
I did. I
did this. So you've been watching that movie for 2 years.
I've been watching it for 2 years, yeah. And to see the process it really is amazing. It's amazing to see the decisions that the director makes in certain instances, and how certain scenes come along and how they progress. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. it's always exciting to watch the final edit. You're like, ooh, I wonder how they colored that scene, or
Oh, that's great.
how they did that. So yeah, it's always exciting. Like I remember when I was cutting a trailer for The Prince of Persia, we started cutting that trailer before they even started filming it. So we had the script, and the digital effects people at Bruckheimer's studios at Disney were doing these things called previs, which looked like Minecraft. Like it was like these super archaic, like just gross graphics that they kind of made to go with one or two scenes. And then I ended up cutting a teaser or a trailer just from these previs things and picking music because they wanted to see what the tone of the trailer would be like. So I actually cut a trailer before they even started shooting the film.
That's great.
6 months before they started shooting the film. We feel very much responsible for the box office because we're the ones doing the advertising for a film. So whether a film is really, really good or really, really bad, I mean, sure, reviews of the trailer and Rotten Tomato scores and things like that will have an effect, but
you mean reviews of the movie?
Of the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we take it upon ourselves to be responsible for that opening. If a weekend opens really well, I mean, if a movie opens really, really well, you're like, did my job.
Yeah, that's great.
But if it doesn't open well, you're like, oh man. And especially if it's a bad movie and it opens well, you're like, all right, who's the man?
Yeah, because you know how good the movie actually is because you've seen it.
Right, we did. Well, but
for the most part. So so that's funny. That's great.
There's always there's always the Monday morning hero, which is like the Monday after a movie opens, and you're looking at the box office, and you're like, yeah, okay, that was.
You're welcome.
But then come Tuesday, all is forgotten, and you're back to doing your job. You get that one day.
Thank you so much for pulling the curtain back on trailers. It's fascinating to see like what a process it is.
Yeah, absolutely.